Checker, eh?
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Sharp Hand Path. I'm your host, Jesse Morgan, and today is finally the day we're doing that Donnie Yen film collection of mine. Hope you're ready for a long one because I've got a few of their movies to go over and a little bit of a description of my thoughts on them. So let's get started. The very first Donnie Yen film I have is Shaolin Drunkard from 1983. And unfortunately, he doesn't actually have a starring role in this. He is just a stunt person, probably for the lead martial artist actor in this film. For some reason, it's called a Wu-Tang Clan selection, and it actually has the Rap Projects W on there. So I'm guessing that the Wu-Tang Clan put out some funding in order to get this digitally remastered and released, and this is volume 12 of the Wu-Tang Clan Presents, so that means there must be 11 others before this. Should be interesting to find out what those other movies are. But yeah, so the Shaolin Drunkard is, again, Donnie Yen's first movie technically, but it was just as a stuntman role. This is a comedic kung fu film, and the premise is that a demonic sorcerer escapes from a prison, and Yuan, a good kung fu sorcerer, while searching for a suitable bride, is recruited by a drunken Shaolin guard that was supposed to be watching the demon. It was imprisoned, named Chan, capture the evil prisoner. And yeah, it's not the greatest film. The drunken Shaolin guard has these really weird fake front teeth, and the type of humor that is in this isn't really my favorite. Some of it's slapstick, yeah, but then some of the acting's pretty bad, and it definitely shows its age. 1983, I would have felt it was more like from the 1960s or early 70s. But honestly, unless you're super duper wanting to collect everything by Donnie Yen, you really don't have to purchase this. There's a couple of interesting fight scenes, and there's some really weird, fantastical shit in this. So yeah, Shaolin Drunkard, 1983. Next up is Donnie Yen's actual first acting role in Drunken Tai Chi. This copy came with a copy of Bruce Lee's Dynamo. I'm not going to be reviewing that on here. I don't remember it being any good, and nothing pops out in my mind about it. So clearly I just got this for the Drunken Tai Chi from 1984, Donnie Yen's first appearance. That was the back of the disc, or back of the case there, and then the yin yang kind of logo on the disc. So the funny thing about this, the Drunken Tai Chi, is that the same drunken old man from Shaolin Drunkard is in this one too, and he still has those weird fake teeth and really cheesy acting. So the premise of this one is, while Donnie Yen's character is on the run from a murderer, he also runs into the same old man from Shaolin Drunkard, who in this one is now a poor puppeteer and Tai Chi master, and eventually together they defeat the killer. It's pretty good action fighting scene wise, but everything in between the fighting scenes is more of that kind of slightly slapstick comedy and just kind of foolishness that isn't really my cup of tea. So, although I'm happy to have Donnie Yen's very first film from 1984, is probably something I'm going to watch maybe one more time in my life, and that's about it. And again, if you are really, really wanting to collect everything by Donnie Yen, maybe pick up this one, but other than that, you're not missing out on much. All right, moving right along to the next one in my collection. This one jumping ahead to 1992. This is Once Upon a Time in China Part 2. Obviously, this is more of a Jet Li movie than it is a Donnie Yen movie. However, Donnie Yen does appear a few times throughout the film, more so in the middle to the end. He'll pop up, and trust me when I say these are not easy films to find. I was lucky to find the Once Upon a Time in China Part 1, 2, and 3 box set at my local used disc shop. So I count my lucky stars that I found it. However, if you want to buy it online, it's like $85 to $125 just for the old regular DVD version. I don't want to know how much the Blu-ray or like new remastered cuts are worth. Like some of these kung fu movies get absolutely insane when it comes to the prices and rarity. So if you haven't seen Once Upon a Time in China 2 or any of the Once Upon a Time in China movies, the plots are very, very in-depth and a lot of different things are going on at once. You might need to watch it a couple of times or more just to get everything that's going on, because if you're not used to this stuff, it's pretty overwhelming with all of the plot lines and subplots that are going on. So in this one, Donnie Yen plays an antagonist to Jet Li's Wong Fei Hung. There's a lot of Wong Fei Hung movies out there, by the way, holy crap. Donnie Yen plays the general, I'm not going to pronounce this properly, but Nap Yen Yun Sut. Wong travels from Foshan to Canton to teach acupuncture to the locals there and some of the occupying British people. While there, Wong Fei Hung fights with the White Lotus sect and asks the local government for help to save a school for children learning English, I believe. Wong eventually spars with Donnie Yen's character in order to gain his appreciation and trust, but even after they spar for a bit, the general still declines to help. Eventually, Wong helps keep a list of rebels' names from Donnie Yen's character, as Nap Yen is really trying to keep the current regime in order, and that's why he won't help Wong in his quest to stop the White Lotus sect, because he's secretly in cahoots with them. And this leads to a final confrontation between Jet Li and Donnie Yen's characters at the end of the movie, and it has a really cool bamboo staff fight, and Jet Li is using his sleeve of his robe to defend in interesting ways. So yeah, this one is definitely worth picking up if you can find it. I really enjoyed the fight scenes in there, and despite the complicated plots and everything going on, it was a really enjoyable watch. Definitely worth picking up in both Jet Li and Donnie Yen's collections. Happy to have this in the trilogy. Alright, up next is 1993's Iron Monkey. This can be a bit of a pain in the butt to find, depending on your luck and where you're looking. I believe I got this off of either Amazon or eBay, which is where I find quite a lot of my stuff if I'm not getting them from the local Deja Vu Discs. But yeah, in this one, Donnie Yen is Wong Ki Hung, who is the father of Wong Fei Hung. So that's cool. You get to see Wong Fei Hung's dad in this doing some stuff. And it also stars Yu Rongguang as the Iron Monkey. The Iron Monkey is a masked martial artist who robs from the rich and gives to the poor. So basically a martial artist version of Robin Hood. And as Yang Ten Chun, the Iron Monkey runs a free medical clinic. Meanwhile, Donnie Yen's character has to save his son, Wong Fei Hung, from a tyrannical governor by agreeing to defeat the Iron Monkey for them. Although after learning his true identity, Wang Qiying teams up with the Iron Monkey to take down Hin Hong, an imperial officer who is now taking over the current governor's office. So yeah, there's a couple of subplots going on. There's some pretty cool fights that happen with the Iron Monkey and Wong Fei Hung's dad, and it leads to Wong Fei Hung being inspired by the Iron Monkey to take up the fight for justice in China. So it's a pretty neat kind of prequel to the Wong Fei Hung kind of legacy, and it also adds a neat bit of kind of superhero-ish element to it. I really enjoyed it. Glad I got a copy. Definitely track down Iron Monkey if you can. Next up is another movie from 1993. This one is called Fist of the Red Dragon, also known as Heroes Among Heroes. I don't know why it's called Fist of the Red Dragon. As far as I'm aware, there's no person in this called the Red Dragon. There's no gang called the Red Dragon. So why they named this Fist of the Red Dragon from Heroes Among Heroes is beyond me. But anyways, in this one, Donnie Yen is a character named Beggar So Chan, and he is apparently one of the 10 Tigers of Canton. Not exactly sure who they are. I feel like they're probably like a rebel group that is trying to help the Chinese civilians overcome the current dynasty, which is a pretty reoccurring theme in a lot of these kung fu movies. Besides Donnie Yen's character, Beggar So-chan, there is also another Wong Fei-hung character portrayed by Wong Yuk in this one, and another Foon character played by Dirksen Lee. So that's cool. There's some more Wong Fei-hung stuff going on in this. Wong is working with the local police in order to fight the opium trade. That's another thing that happens in quite a few of these movies, is there's like a drug problem or a gang problem that the main hero and the local law force is trying to combat. But yeah, Donnie Yen's character, So-chan, fights with a local gang called the Fire Lotus instead of the White Lotus. There's a lot of Lotus gangs in these movies. And he accidentally blows up part of the town square, and he has to apologize to Wong Fei-hung for it. But he also gets kind of depressed that he accidentally hurt a bunch of his fellow citizens, and this Prince Barak person ends up giving him opium and saying, oh, it's okay, you could take this and you'll feel better. But he ends up getting hooked on the opium and eventually has to try and get help for it, and his dad locks him away and tries to drain the drug from him and everything like that. Meanwhile, his foster father is killed by some of the Fire Lotus gang, and once he kicks the habit, Donnie Yen's So-chan character teams up with Wong Fei-hung and tries to fight Prince Barak and end the opium trade, because I feel like Prince Barak in this was also teaming with the Fire Lotus gang and trying to spread opium. So yeah, it's one of those kind of complicated storylines where there's a bunch of different plots going on here and there and a couple characters to follow. It's not nearly as bad as some of the Once Upon a Time in China plot lines, but it gets pretty close to it at points. The fight scenes in this is really, really good though, so minus some of the goofy, again, weird teeth, fake teeth thing going on with So-chan's stepmother or aunt or whatever. She has these weird teeth, and then she ends up like getting punched in the face and the teeth come out, and then she falls in love with So-chan's dad. It's really weird. So besides the weird slapstick comedy at the beginning, once it gets past that, then it starts really getting good and you know, worth watching. So yeah, if you can find Fist of the Red Dragon, you know, it eventually gets worth watching and pretty cool, and there's some interesting fight scenes. Donnie Yen hooked on opium is pretty weird, so yeah. Pretty good purchase. Glad I have it in the collection. Next up is more or less a cameo, but it counts as a Donnie Yen movie because he is in there kicking ass a couple of times. And that is 2002's Blade 2, which is arguably the best Blade movie in the series. I really like the weird mutant hybrid vampires. They're creepy as fuck, and the main bad creepy mutant vampire has a crazy couple of showdowns in it. But yes, in this one, Donnie Yen is a mute swordsman called Snowman, and he's a member of a vampire kind of like assassin team called the Blood Pack. It kind of picks up after the first movie though, with Blade saving Whistler, and then he has to end up teaming up with Donnie Yen's Blood Pack in order to take down these new hybrid mutant vampires that are going around killing vampires and humans. Unfortunately, Donnie Yen dies to one of his transformed teammates. He ends up morphing into one of those mutant things, kind of like a necromorph version of a vampire, but without like the tentacle arms. Yeah, it's unfortunate. He's only in it for a couple of scenes here and there, but his scenes are pretty cool. And this is, again, the best Blade movie in the series. I like Blade Trinity because I'm a sucker for Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds. The humor in it always cracks me up. And it's kind of cool that you see Mick from Legion of Superheroes as Dracula in it. So yeah, it's got an interesting couple of cameos. I also like Posey Parker, his character in it. She actually is like in that one. In other movies, not so much, but I dig her as a vampire in it. So yeah, definitely glad to have Blade 2 for multiple reasons, not just Donnie Yen. All right, this next one, I know I'm gonna piss off a lot of people by saying this, but this is definitely not one of my favorite Jet Li or Donnie Yen films. And I know the martial arts film freak and I definitely don't see eye to eye when it comes to this movie. He seems to think this is like a masterpiece of art, and I find it meh. I told him that I'd rather watch Never Back Down 10 times again before I watch this movie. But anyways, what I'm talking about is 2002's Hero with Jet Li. I know, I can hear the boos coming from the comments section right now. Don't worry, I get you. This is supposed to hit everyone in the Kung Fu cinema circle really well, and it's supposed to, give standing ovations for this movie. But I'm not one for artsy-fartsy, stuffy, pretentious stuff in movies. I just like the raw fighting and maybe a pretty cool storyline. But this has a bunch of artsy-fartsy, flipping around, pedals flying through air, people jumping from tree to tree, super duper superpowers where you can run around the circle and chop a bunch of crates in half and then catch a teacup on the end of your sword thing before all the crates fall. No, sorry, it just borderlines on unbelievable. Like, I dig the fantasy stuff in Kung Fu things sometimes, but the more and more it stretches, the less and less fun it is for me, unless there's a reason for everyone to have superpowers. And I'm sorry, Kung Fu doesn't give you superpowers as much as these movies would like you to believe. So, Hero and Jet Li's character being like this unstoppable, like supernatural, crazy Kung Fu guy, whatever. Cool on paper, but for me, not so much my favorite. Anyways, Donnie Yen's character in this is a character called Chang Kung, aka Long Sky. He's one of the very first of the King's enemies that Jet Li's character, the Nameless Hero, defeats. He's a master martial artist and spearman, and the fight is pretty neat. Them standing around in the rain, imagining the battle they're going to have in their head before they actually fight. It's kind of like, what? How could you possibly imagine all of the things that are going to happen like that? The fight's cool regardless. I think it's funny that Jet Li's character gives the lute playing guy a coin to play some music while they kick each other's ass. Hey DJ, play a fat beat so I can kick my friend's ass to it, kind of thing. 10 nerd points if you know what movie that's from. Anyways, Jet Li is a martial arts super duper powered assassin who defeats all of the enemies of the king in order to get close enough to him. And then the twist at the end of the movie, I don't know, I get it, I get that his choice, but it's like, you led the entire movie up to this point just to not do the thing, and it's like, really, come on. But either way, I'm happy to have it in my collection just so that I can watch it every now and then if I'm really feeling that whimsical, supernatural, fantasy, kung fu stuff. But other than that, I probably won't watch this one too many times. But yeah, this is 2002's Hero with Jet Li and Donnie Yen. Next up is a movie, whether you're going to like it or you're not going to like it. It's a Jackie Chan film, first and foremost. It's got Owen Wilson in it, so that immediately drops it 3 or 4 points for me. 2003's Shanghai Knights, which is the sequel to Shanghai Noon. Again, this is more of a Jackie Chan film, but Donnie Yen does play a character in it called Wu Chow. He's an assassin who plans on killing the British royal family on behalf of this low-ranking duke who would never ever have a chance of being a king or a prince and, having his following and hierarchy. So the duke hires him to kill the royal family, and in return, the duke will give Wu Chow this imperial seal of China, which is basically a priceless heirloom. I'm not sure if it has powers it endows the person with, or it gives them some sort of like free pass to some sort of military hierarchy or royalty hierarchy. That's not really explained, and I didn't look into it super duper much. But yeah, also Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson are tasked to retrieve the seal, and in the meantime, they're also trying to help stop the assassination of the British royal family. It's interesting. I feel like it might be slightly better than Shanghai Noon, simply because there's a little bit more interesting things going on. I also like Donnie Yen's fight with Jackie Chan. It's a little lackluster because of what happens to Donnie Yen's character, and they don't exactly get to finish their fight without spoilers. That's all I can say. But It's all right. Again, I can't stand Owen Wilson. He's not funny. He's a terrible actor. He's a bumbling idiot in this movie. And they definitely should have gave more screen time to Donnie Yen and a few more fights between him and Jackie Chan in this movie. Yeah, it's all right, and it just has to be added to the collection because A, Jackie Chan, and B, Donnie Yen. 2003's Shanghai Knights. The next are all Ip Man movies for a bit. So here we go. Ip Man 1. Ip Man is a really cool character to base some kung fu movies on. In this one, Donnie Yen is obviously the titular character, Master Yip. In this one, he fights against a Japanese military army and is trying to save China from oppression, and he infamously beats a bunch of black belt karateka, and then at the end defeats the general in a final epic battle. And I know a bunch of people who take karate are like, wow, that could never happen. One kung fu guy could never take down 10 black belts. Well, I'm taking karate right now. I'm going to be going for my yellow belt in June, and trust me, a kung fu master, if they know what they're doing and they're really freaking good and they've been fighting people for a long time, could probably take down 10 black belts. Just because you got a black belt in karate doesn't mean you are the world's best fighter, doesn't mean you have experience fighting, and you're also fighting someone that doesn't have the same style as you, so you don't really know how to predict what they're doing. So maybe not 10 black belts at a time, especially if they all attack them at once and not just kind of 1 or 2 at a time, but at least 5 black belts at a time. I could believe that he could actually take 5 black belts at a time. It is what it is. And as someone who's taking karate, I could see why someone could take 10 black belts at a time. It is what it is. Anywho, too much time being spoken about this. Y'all know Ip Man. Really good stuff. Absolutely love that movie. Let's move on to Ip Man 2, Legend of the Grandmaster. Got this one on Blu-ray. Didn't seek it out specifically for Blu-ray quality or any special features or anything like that. This was just the one I got. In this one, Donnie Yen's Master Yip defeats a bunch of masters from the local martial arts schools, and he does it to get permission to teach Wing Chun in that town. And he eventually has to fight this British boxing champion known as the Twister, because that's an awesome nickname, in order to bring back honor to Chinese martial arts, because the Twister is kicking all of the local kung fu students' asses, and he's just making a mockery of kung fu because toxic alpha male reasons. So anyways, Ip Man shows up at the end, whoops his ass, and makes him look like a fool. Just about as bad of a fool as his nickname, the Twister, makes him. So yeah, love this one. Love the fight with all the other kung fu masters on the table. Sammo Hung makes an appearance in this. He's basically the one that helps choreograph these movies too. So that's kind of cool that Sammo Hung knows Wing Chun that well to choreograph it in such an awesome way. And I just love the way Wing Chun looks on camera, especially when it's done well. So Ip Man 2, probably the best out of the series. Moving right along to Ip Man 3, no subtitle for this one. In this one, Donnie Yen portrays Master Yip again and intervenes in this triad gang trying to attack his son's school and force the principal to sell it to Mike Tyson, who is this kind of fierce property developer on the outside, but on the inside he's also running this kind of drug gang and human trafficking gang. And he's trying to buy the school so he can have more property to do his dirty business, clearly. There's also Zan Jing as Chung Tin Chi, a fellow Wing Chun practitioner and master who eventually becomes known as Master Z, even though his name doesn't start with a Z and he doesn't have a Z anywhere in his name. Someone explain that one to me, please. I have no idea why Chung Tin Chi is known as Master Z. Am I just pronouncing his name wrong? Is there like a pronunciation of Z instead of Chi in there? I don't know. It makes no sense. Anyways, this one's pretty good. I like the fight between Ip Man and the Muay Thai guy in the school, where he has to go in the elevator and protect his wife from being hit from the Muay Thai guy, and then there's fighting in staircases and shit, and he's doing that like Ip Man pose with his feet pointed inwards and stabilizing himself on the really, really cool fights. And then him standing up against Mike Tyson, who's like a million feet taller than him and built like a brick shit house. I mean, sure, he's throwing him around a bit with some of his punches, but Ip Man's still holding his own as this like 100-pound soaking wet dude. Pretty impressive. I really like Ip Man 3. Okay, now moving on to Master Z, Ip Man Legacy, where Donnie Yen is more of a producer role in this. Zhang Jin, or Max Zhang, whatever name he wants to go by, returns as Chung Tin Chi, aka Master Z, for some reason. Yen is mostly a producer on this film. He only briefly appears in some pictures on the wall and some flashbacks of Master Z remembering his fight with Ip Man, and that's about it for Donnie Yen's appearances in this. Tony Jaa also cameos as a character named Sadi the Warrior. He fights with Zhang for a few minutes in one scene or two. Dave Bautista is the main bad guy of this. He is the smuggling ring leader and goes by Owen Davidson. It's a pretty cool fight between Master Z and Dave Bautista in the end. Again, kind of has this Ip Man versus Mike Tyson feel. He kind of gets thrown around a bit, but he also eventually slowly succeeds against this big brawling bruiser of a fighter. Pretty cool. And there's a couple of fight scenes between the gang members here and there. I actually really enjoy Master Z Ip Man Legacy on its own, even though there's basically no Ip Man in it. And apparently there was a sequel reportedly in the works. However, the budget was cut from about 22 million or 20 million down to about $13 million, and there's no talks of what's happening with that yet. But I'm on board. I want to see more Master Z. I believe at the end of this movie, it kind of implies that he is actually going to reopen his Wing Chun Academy or school, because in the meantime in this, he's just doing rickshaw work and kind of doing like a convenience store job, which, what the fuck? Dude, you know Kung Fu. Teach some Kung Fu. Anywho, good movie. Definitely needs to be added to your Donnie Yen collection, regardless of him just being a producer role in this, because there's some sick fights. Max Zhang, or Jin Zhang, kicks ass in this, and once more, there's really cool Wing Chun fights. So yeah. Rounding out the Ip Man collection regarding Donnie Yen stuff, that is, I've got way more Ip Man movies, but this we'll focus on Donnie Yen. Ip Man 4, the finale. A lot of people in this community seem to not really like so much, or just find it's the least impressive out of the Donnie Yen Ip Man series. I don't think so. I think it's about on par with Part 3. I'd say it's about on par with Master Z for the most part. I got a really shit copy of this. You know, I saw a cheap copy and I'm like, oh, I'll save some, pennies, and I'll get this version for $5, $6 shipped. It's ass. It's broken on some of the sides. There's some like cracks up there, and then it's got like this rental bookstore sticker right on the top that, I don't know, just will never come off. So I'm eventually going to pick up a better version of this, just out of respect for Donnie Yen and Kung Fu. This is a terrible cheap copy, and that's the only bad things I can say about this movie, because the rest is cool. Donnie Yen is back as Ip Man, obviously. He's unfortunately diagnosed with throat cancer in this. He has to tell his son eventually, and his son's, not impressed that he hid it from him, and they've got into a bit of a fight, and he kind of leaves home and lives with his uncle for a bit. Ip Man, in the meantime, travels to San Francisco to hang out with Bruce Lee and see what's going on with his academy and some of his fights and stuff like that. Danny Chen reprises his role as Bruce Lee from the Legend of Bruce Lee Chinese TV series that's on Netflix. Hopefully stays on there for a while, because we're not getting any DVDs of it. There's like, I think 4 volumes, and each one has 4 episodes on it. There's 50 episodes. So what the fuck? We need more. We need a box set or some shit, because it's a really good series and represents a lot of Bruce Lee's life. I don't know why we don't have a box set of it. I know some people are like, oh, it's garbage acting, but I love it. I love the series. I'm halfway through watching it a second time. I think I'm just past the part where he's getting notified that the Green Hornet series is being canceled, so he's kind of bummed out, and I think he's just getting out of the wheelchair again after getting his back fucked up. So yeah, I got a little bit more of the series to watch. So good, and we need more Danny Chan as Bruce Lee in movies. But yeah, in the meantime, Ip Man is a hero again and saves the daughter of a chairman of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association from some high school bullies. They're kicking her ass for reasons, racism, I guess. So Donnie Yen saves her, and he ends up sparring with the leader of the Benevolent Association. And the leader's like, oh, you only saved her in order to get a reference letter so that your son can go to college or something. And he's like, no, I just did it because I wanted her to get here safe. Deuces. And he walks out. Scott Adkins is also in this. I'm trying to get into Scott Adkins films. He's all right. I dig his character as Boyka from the Undisputed series. Pretty cool. He gives off like a menacing Russian like bad guy feel for sure. Definitely has that gangster hoodlum thing about him. Yep, definitely is intimidating. So I dig that. I'm trying to get into other movies with him in it. He's also in Triple Threat for a bit as well, and a couple other things I have inadvertently with him in it. I haven't gone out and sought any Scott Adkins movies on purpose though. I'll probably eventually get to it, because there's only so many Jackie Chan and Jet Li and Donnie Yen movies out there. I mean, there's a lot, but eventually I'll run out and I'll want more. So I'll probably get some more Scott Adkins in the future. Anyways, in this, he's Gunnery Sergeant Barton. No, not Hartman. Barton. A corrupt racist who wishes to crush Wing Chun for some reason and is trying to push karate as the superior art. He has no reason to do this. I feel like it's just he doesn't like Chinese people for some reason. Gotta love racism. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just hate. So yeah, in this, Ip Man eventually defeats Adkins' karate masters and Barton himself in a final ending fight, which is really, really sick, because Ip Man is sick with cancer and he still beats this guy. So fuck yeah, really, really cool, very empowering, really, really cool fight. And he does that before returning to China. And it kind of ends with Ip Man agreeing to teach his son Wing Chun and recording him working on his wooden dummy before finally passing away. Rip Ip Man. Pretty cool series. I think they could maybe do a sequel here, or a prequel here or there, touching in some points, but they tried to do that with another actor. I can't remember his name at the moment, but they do have kind of a final battle, the final fight. Ip Man, the final fight with some other actor that portrays Ip Man. It's alright. It has to do with the triads. There's some interesting fights in it. But yeah, I like Ip Man 4. Bruce Lee's cool in it. I like Danny Chan's portrayal of Bruce Lee. Again, need more of him as Bruce Lee and stuff. And not Kung Fu League. That was some really silly shit. Again, hopefully you're buckled up for this, because this is a long video and I didn't want to make a two-parter unless I got a full stack of new stuff from Donnie Yen. This is just the current stuff I have. So this one is Bodyguards and Assassins. This one is kind of another one of those complicated plot lines where a lot of things are going on and a lot of characters are getting involved, and a lot of those characters are doing a lot of things. So hopefully you were well prepared from Once Upon a Time in China's series and Fist of the Red Dragon, because this thing's going to do the same thing. In this one, Donnie Yen is an officer named Shen Chongyang, He's a cop who reluctantly decides to help the bodyguards of Sun Wen. Sun Wen is a rebel leader of a group that plans to rise up against the Qing dynasty in China. Sun Wen has to evade the Qing dynasty's assassins. They're trying to stop him from meeting with the fellow rebels in Hong Kong to proceed with the plans of the revolution. So yeah, it's kind of neat how you follow along certain characters and eventually run into Donnie Yen, who is a cop that kind of just wants to help because he sees the fall of China and the not so great leadership of the Qing dynasty. And there's an interesting kind of build up at the end where you're not sure if Sun's dead and if the revolution's going to fail. So yeah, there's pretty suspenseful moments at the end, but all in all, it's kind of all over the place and there's a lot to really pay attention to. Make sure you have an energy drink or a couple of coffees before you watch this one, and don't have your kids running in and out of the room bugging you for stuff, because you'll get lost quickly. But there's some cool fight scenes, and I do dig the rebellion versus the giant empire kind of storyline that's going on. So I'm happy to have 2009's Bodyguards and Assassins. All right, let's move along. I punched the camera, so if it's not in the same spot where it was before, my apologies. Shit happens. So next one is Legend of the Fist, The Return of Chen Zhen from 2010. I love Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury, so I was happy to see the Chen Zhen character come back and play a part, played by Donnie Yen, who is Chen Zhen in this. Zhen faked his death and helped the Allies fight the Germans in World War II. So again, fighting for the underdogs and being just a general folklore hero. Love the Chen Zhen character. And then after returning to China, he helps the resistance fend off the Japanese army. Zhen disguises himself halfway through the movie as a black masked superhero in order to save these marked Chinese activists from assassination. Kind of cool because it sort of looks like Kato or Jet Li's Black Mask character mixed together. It has some really neat Pulp Fiction vibes going on to it, and mixed in with the Kung Fu, of course. Excellent mix. Eventually Zhen tracks down the main colonel named Chikarashi Takeshi, and then he has one final battle with him in the dojo, similar to that of Fist of Fury with Bruce Lee. So it's nice that they kind of added that as a homage to the first movie. There's some other things that are going on in this as well. The romantic interest of Donnie Yen's in this, she eventually gets revealed as a spy for the Japanese army. She kind of regrets it though, because she's falling in love with Donnie Yen's character and she doesn't like what they're doing. But yeah, it's kind of a sad side story, and Chen Zhen ends up getting tortured and captured at one point. It's fucked up. So yeah, really cool though. I enjoy this movie a lot. I love it when he's dressed up as the black masked character here that sort of looks like, again, Kato from the Green Hornet. Another nice kind of like homage to Bruce Lee's character. You definitely want to get The Legend of the Fist. All right, only a couple more. Hopefully you stuck around. Maybe you had some popcorn and you are enjoying this length of video. Hopefully, because I got a lot to show and Donnie Yen has infinitely more movies than what I'm showing, so there'll probably be a part 2 eventually. All right, moving on to 2013's Special ID. This was the most recent one I've picked up. It's pretty good. It's not as good as another one I'm going to show in 3 movies from now, but I'd say it's up there when it comes to the kind of like undercover cop action type of like Kung Fu guy versus criminal stuff. Anyway, Special ID has Donnie Yen as an undercop named Dragon Chan. China's most brutal gangs are paranoid of betrayal and some government infiltration and moles, so they're kicking their members' asses and beating them up and trying to figure out who the mole is and going kind of crazy. The police insiders are being caught here and there and slowly eliminated from the gangs, and it's up to Donnie Yen's Dragon Chan character to protect the rest of the moles that are inside and take down one of his old friends, Sonny, in a battle of morals versus loyalty. The end fight is pretty crazy. He does some interesting MMA type of ground and pound and flip around and locks and punches and crazy stuff. They use the environment as obstacles to get smashed against, and the fight is really neat. There's no chain punches or any crazy kung fu going on. However, I'd say it's definitely worth checking out and worth getting this to add to your collection of Donnie Yen films. Glad I have it. 2013 Special ID. Moving on to a couple of films in his collection that aren't really the greatest. There's a couple of funny scenes, there's a couple of interesting fights. It's more fantastical and weird though, and there's some slapstick comedy in it. Not nearly as bad as the Shaolin drunkard or drunken Shaolin stuff, Tai Chi, whatever. But there's some interesting stuff you're like, could have done without it. So anyways, this is Donnie Yen's Iceman, the first film from 2014. It's a comedic martial arts action film. Donnie Yen in this is a Ming Dynasty officer named Ho Ying, or if you're watching the English dubs, He Ying for some reason. I don't know why the difference between Ho and He. It's there if you switch from captions to dubs. Tasked with retrieving a mythical time-traveling device from India, Donnie Yen's character is betrayed by his own men and then frozen in time for many, many years until the present. Him and two of the other Ming officers that were in the army are also frozen, meanwhile are being preserved in cryogenic tubes. During transport from one place to another, there's an accident and their tubes end up being ruptured and they end up breaking free. The two Ming officers are chasing down Donnie Yen's character, and he has to find sanctuary and a place to hide while he figures out how he got there and how to find the timepiece and get back to his original time. He's helped out by a young woman named May, I believe, and he kind of has a romantic interest with her. She's more romantically interested with him. Yeah, there's a little bit of a love interest there, and he has to protect her from getting in trouble once in a while. The Ming officers pursue He Ying while he tries to uncover the truth, and they eventually have a final battle on this bridge, and it ends with him being flung into the ocean and seemingly drowning. So yeah, this one's interesting. It's a little bit better than the second one. So if you really feel like picking up 2014's Iceman, go ahead. It's not his best work, not his worst work, but not his best either. This one, on the other hand, is not that good. It's 2018's Iceman, the Time Traveler. This one was really hard to talk about because I watched it once and it was semi-confusing. It has some interesting plot points here and there, and things just kind of happen in this, and you're like, oh, okay. And then if you look it up online, the synopsis for this is the exact same synopsis as the first movie, and no matter where you go, you can't find the synopsis for what actually happens in The Time Traveler. So I basically had to put this movie on again and pretty much rewatch the whole thing in order to give a proper description to you guys watching. So it goes as such. Yen is Ho Ying again, returning where he left off, floating out in the middle of the ocean and sinking down after being blown off the bridge. However, he's brought to a local morgue and saved by Simon Yam's character named Wan Long Chung, reprising his role from the first movie. And he does this in order to retrieve the orb that Ho Ying is after and looking for, and he wants to activate the time-traveling device himself and obviously change the events of history in his favor. Chung kidnaps Donnie Yen's girlfriend in this, May, and forces Ho Ying to use the chant that starts up the machine so that he can travel through time. Ho Ying and May use the orb once they've disappeared in time to travel back in time themselves to Ho Ying's old village that he used to reside in before he went to the military. While there, Chung has already infiltrated the Ming Dynasty's army and has convinced them to follow him and his orders and worked his way up the ranks and takes the army to Ho Ying's village and basically completely annihilates everyone, just completely wipes out the village and the clans there, and basically tries to strong arm Ho Ying into becoming one of his generals and working with them, or die, basically. But Ho Ying evades the army, fights them back, gets away, and even takes down Chung. He then has the power to go back and stop the army from wiping out his village and saves Mei. It's not really left very clear. There's a lot of back and forth going on, and some random kind of like celestial beings that pop up in this Nexus plane. It just basically looks like a field, and then there's some trees circling it and fog. It's honestly not that great of a movie. So I feel like I read somewhere that Donnie Yen was even not impressed with this movie and was kind of mad that they brought him back for this one because he doesn't really like it. You definitely don't need to have it in your collection. It's not the greatest. If anything, maybe stop at the first movie. If you need to collect everything, sure, like I do, but it's not the greatest, and you're not missing out on anything crazy. Unlike this next one. This next one is really freaking good. This is 2014's Kung Fu Killer. And this movie has a lot of really cool kung fu fight scenes, and just like Special ID has Donnie Yen playing a cop, this time he's an incarcerated police self-defense instructor who accidentally murdered an opponent during a fight. His name in this is Ha Ha Mo, one of the two, and he agrees to help this female police inspector Luk Yan Sum capture a vicious martial arts master killer for his freedom. And the killer in this goes around murdering the best of the martial arts there. So the best striker, the best kicker, the best ground and pounder, the best swordsman. He's going around challenging all of them to prove that he is the best and ultimate kung fu artist. So it's neat. It's kind of like Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter helps the cops track the killer, but this time it's Donnie Yen, and he's like a kung fu expert and knows how to track down people based on seemingly insignificant clues, but he's got a nose for detail. It's really, really cool. And the fights between the killer and some of the masters is nice, and then the ending fight is dragged out and crazy, as you'd expect in a kung fu movie. You definitely want to get Kung Fu Killers, probably some of Donnie Yen's better police type story work. All right, last two. Are you still here? Give yourself a pat on the back, because holy crap, this is a long update. All right, this is Donnie Yen's foray into Hollywood. This is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. In this, Yen is a character named Chirrut Imwe, a blind warrior who believes in the Force and is one of the Guardians of the Wills, whatever the hell that is. So anyways, he and Baze Malbus aid Jyn Erso and infiltrate an Imperial base to send the Death Star schematics to the Rebel Command. Donnie Yen's character in this is mostly in it, halfway through for a bit in a prison scene with Baz Malbus and Jyn and Cassian, and then more so at the end when they're finally at the Imperial base trying to infiltrate and fend off all of the Imperial troopers and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting how Hollywood and these movies always try to make him either mute or blind or some sort of odd handicap for some reason. I'm not sure why they do that. Maybe if he's mute, then he won't have so many lines, or if he's blind, he'll seem less weird or less Asian. I don't know. It's an interesting little point though that I've noticed about some of these more like high budget films or Hollywood type of films when it comes to Asian actors. It's weird. Anyways, good movie. I'm not super huge into Star Wars. I have watched all the films, all of the episodes, and all of the side stories like Solo, the Star Wars movie or whatever it was. Obviously this, because I own it on DVD. This one's pretty good. There's some pretty interesting lightsaber scenes with Chirrut Imwe's character. I dig the whole, again, rebels versus the giant empire thing. Definitely tickles my fancy, but there's not a bunch of kung fu in this at all. It's just a small role for Donnie Yen in a Hollywood film, so If you don't get this, I don't blame you, unless you're a Star Wars fan. So, yeah, it was alright. 2016's Star Wars Rogue One. And finally, we're there. We're at the end. This is the last Donnie Yen film I have in my collection at this time, and that is 2017's XXX, The Return of Xander Cage. So XXX Part 3. I think I have Part 1. I guess I need to track down Part 2, maybe sometime. Anyways, Donnie Yen in this is Zhang, a XXX agent and head of the team tracking down the Pandora's box device. Tony Jaa makes a cameo in this as a character named Talon, who's a member of Zhang's team. Of course, this is more or less a Vin Diesel film, and he has his team of XXX characters momentarily butting heads with Donnie Yen's team, but they eventually join forces to stop the Russian terrorists and get the Pandora's box back. So it's neat. There's some really weird, like, X Games type of shit going on. Like, you can see here, Vin Diesel's character is going to go down a giant hill on skis for some fucking reason. Yeah, this film is definitely a kind of dumb action flick, just meant to sit down, turn your brain off, and eat some popcorn and chug some Coke too, because the plot isn't super duper complicated at all, especially when you watch things like Once Upon a Time in China's series. This is more or less just take the kids to a fun, explodey, beat 'em up action film at the movies, which is why, again, I'm questioning whether I really want to get number 2 just so I can have the XXX trilogy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like Vin Diesel. His movies are you know, mostly pretty good. Not a super huge fan of the Fast and Furious series. Some of it's cool. I used to be more into it when I was like 18, but yeah, Samuel L. Jackson's in this for a bit before he gets blown up. The scenes with Donnie Yen's cool. It's worth it to see him do his thing for a couple of minutes here and there and kind of have a butting of heads with Vin Diesel. If you don't want to get this, you don't have to. It's definitely not kung fu related. It's just brainless action fun. So yeah, 2017's XXX, Return of Xander Cage in the collection. And that is it. That is all 20 or more movies that I have of Donnie Yen so far. There is way more still that's out there to be collected. I'm not going to get his like weird rom-com stuff or things like that. I'm mostly just going to be tracking down his action and kung fu films. So if you don't see the other ones, you know, don't come at me in the comment section. I'm not getting literally everything by Donnie Yen, and some of the stuff is super duper hard to find. The movie with Michelle Yeoh, Wing Chun, good luck finding a copy of that for a decent price, if you can find it at all. If you have a region-free DVD player, maybe not so hard, but I don't at the time. I just have my Xbox, and it likes to randomly not play DVDs that are region 1 anyways. So yay Canada. Anywho, that's it. Hope you enjoyed my collection. Let me know which one of these movies is your favorite. Give me suggestions in the comments which movies I don't have that you think I should pick, like go get next. Like, what are some super duper essential Donnie Yen films that I don't have or didn't show that I should be focusing on next to get. Would be cool to hear your opinions. And that is it. I've been your host, Jesse Morgan. Until next time, Shei Shei, Na Shin, and Wanan.
We should run. We should hide. We should kick their butts.